All right, special edition of the Anik and Florian podcast. We are joined by the consensus greatest bantamweight of all time, former two-time UFC bantamweight champ, my dear friend Dominick CRUZ. Great to see you, my man. Welcome home.
Always good to see you, Anik.
How was Austin, Texas? Looked pretty festive there with all those finishes. Not a bad night.
Man, you don't really realize how crazy fighting can be until you see 9 finishes in one night. Like, my adrenaline was pumping when I got done with that fight until like 4 a.m. Just,
yeah,
you don't,
sure.
I don't know. Sometimes you get out of there and you don't realize how like amped up you are because you're just calling all night, and then you get done. And I was like, whoa, it was insane. That was history made. Literally. I was telling people in Austin, like, some people came up and said, that was my first fight that I ever saw. And I said, you have no idea. You just saw a history making fight card.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah, no, it seemed great, and the crowd was great, and I think there's plenty more where that came from domestically once the UFC continues to get out of the UFC Apex. I know our guy DC kind of misses the friendly confines of the UFC Apex. How is it for you calling fights with a crowd? I know you've done it since COVID, but you spent a lot of time at the Apex as well, so how is it for you calling fights back on the road?
I think that's part of the adrenaline too, to be honest. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's there's nothing like having the fans. You don't. Like, you never would think of a scenario where you don't have fans for fights until Dr. Fauci created this whole situation. So with all that, it's like, now we're here, we're back with fans again, and everything's back to normal. And it's like, wow, you can never take fans for granted ever again, because now we felt what it's like without them.
Right. So I know we have this judging and refereeing seminar coming up on Friday. Are you?
Oh, I'm so excited. Like, whoa, I cannot wait for this. This is going to be, I don't know, maybe the highlight of my month.
Well, I was more excited like 8 weeks ago, but I've been diving in and I'm discouraged the more I dive into the process. But I'm not going to bore our audience with that. So, but after this obligation Friday, are you dark until your fight now on August 13th or?
Yeah, I worked my last event. That should pay for my dog bills, because Dojo just blew his ACL, the little jerk. Oh. Cost me an arm and a leg, literally. So I had to make some money, Anik, because I'm going to be off for the next 3 months. You know, no work. So I had to make some money before I started this camp to pay for the camp.
Yeah. Well, and certainly people can support the footwork movement at DominickCRUZMMA.com. More on that on the back end of this interview, if I can even call it that, with one of my dear friends. So I asked off of the show on August 13th. I will not be there for you and CHITO Vera. No, I'm just kidding. I did not.
I was like, wow, really?
No. But for you, I mean, you've had the chance, for lack of a better word, to call fights involving your dear friends and training partners. Jeremy Stephens, I guess, would be chief among them. But I think you mentally are so forged that you're certainly able to put that behind you. You know, for me, like, when you walk out, it's tough. But once the fight is actually happening, I'm certainly not thinking about our friendship. But I'd imagine that was an interesting navigation for you early on as well.
Just calling fights calling fights while I'm competing is the hardest thing I can do. Like, fighting when a friend's fighting, adding to that makes it even double. So I got Jeremy Stephens, who's a friend, and I'm calling his fight. And that makes me nervous. But then I'm also competing, so I can like put myself in that scenario. So when you're sitting next to that octagon and I can't help but put myself in the bare feet, I guess you'd say, of the guys that are in the octagon that night, because, you know, it could be me. It is me. So it can be pretty daunting to do that job, and compartmentalize is not always as easy as people might think.
Right. There's so much to follow up on there. As some of our listeners and viewers know, you called CHITO Vera's last fight. You have to spend the better part of 8 hours fucking putting the guy over, right? There's a lot that goes into this. But during the main card Saturday night, some fighters would relish this opportunity, but it's not that easy when you announce your fight live on the air on the main card. And if you don't know, it's a main event against Marlon CHITO Vera, August 13th. It's in San Diego. And I thought you did a great job sort of balancing that on the broadcast, putting him over as best you could. When you verbally agreed to this fight, if I could ask, did you know it was going to be in San Diego, where you've spent a lot of your time training and living over the past several years?
Well, I wanted to fight this summer, and I wanted, I don't need to like rush in to fight like I did early on in my career. So I'm just staying healthy. And when I'm healthy and everything lines up, I'm jumping on it. So I wanted to fight this summer, and then they're like, yeah, there's this fight in California, and we got a guy who's ranked above you. That's all I was asking, because that gives me a chance to be able to get a pay raise if I'm fighting people that are ranked above me.
Sure.
And it moves me closer to that. You know, at this point, I've won 2 world titles. My goal is to win a 3rd and be the first one to do that in this division for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, who knows? You never know when they're going to give you that shot. So the next thing in line would be to make as much money as you can.
Of course. Yeah.
Because I am a prize fighter. So, you know, that's the next piece. And that's what I'm looking to do. But I did not know it was going to be there until they told me that, you know, all right, this summer we're going to move to Cal. I'm like, well, that's my backyard. This is the one. This is it.
Yeah,
Let's go.
right.
You know what I mean? And then
Right.
CHITO Vera is right down the road. He's an hour and a half south of me or north of me, in Orange County, in between LA and San Diego. So I think between the two of us, you know, should be pretty good.
They're going to bang the place out. There's no doubt about it. But in a lot of respects, like Derek Lewis would tell you, that it's an absolute nuisance. He would rather compete anywhere in the world but Houston, Texas. I know you live a lot of the year in Las Vegas now, but I'd imagine, you know, there's a lot of people, not just tickets. There's just a lot of fucking noise competing in your home city, bro.
Well, let's be honest. It's not just competing in the home city. It's realistically the home city adds to it because, you know, you got family, friends, radio stations, and everybody wants a piece of you at that point. But it's more being a main event. You just gotta, being a main event, this is a world title fight. People don't know, like the UFC pulled a fast one on all of us fighters and they added 2 rounds to us and we're not even fighting for a title, and you don't get paid more unless you negotiate it. So it's like, what happens if I just signed a 6-fight contract at the UFC and they decided to throw me into a main event? You know, I better hope that I negotiated my money where I wanted, because I'm locked into that contract for 6 fights.
Right.
And when you fight one 5-round fight, you're going to keep fighting 5-round fights. They're not going to drop you down. They're not going to just, you know. So I came back and I fought a couple 3-round fights because of where I was at. And, you know, now I'm at a place, I got a couple wins, and now they want me to main event. So here we are.
So 5 rounds versus 3. And you and I have had a lot of conversation off the record about this, but I'll put it simply. Fact or fiction, there are certain opponents where having the 5 rounds is more favorable than having just 15 minutes with which to work. Is that fair?
Fact.
All right. Fair enough. So Chael Sonnen's thesis statement on this fight between you and CHITO, and by the way, former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion Dominick CRUZ with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Chael just said, and he's had a lot to say, right? I mean, you may want to tune out some of the clamor, but here, but
having something to say, get out of here.
But hey, I mean, despite some of what he says, what his thesis statement is, let's put something on this fight right now, because in terms of your career risk management, as you try to become a 3-time UFC bantamweight champion, he feels like taking on the division's most decorated finisher comes with enough risk that you should be guaranteed a title shot. And candidly, so should CHITO taking on the guy who built the division. But it would seem to me, even though there are a lot of big fights at bantamweight, that no language like that has been put on this fight as yet. Is that fair?
No, they're not going to put that. Are you kidding me? You think you're going to get the UFC to commit to a title shot? Like, to anybody? Get out of here.
Well, but you're treating,
that's like,
right. No, that's fair. But you're treating this like a title fight. So I would imagine a big part of the upside to this fight is that CHITO has momentum and you can get a title fight if you beat him.
I believe this is all the implications for a title fight. You're not wrong. Neither is Chael. But that doesn't mean the UFC cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
Care.
Fair.
They're a machine, and the machine, you know, any machine, there's no heart. It's just money and power and energy. Yeah. And that's what the UFC runs with. And that's okay. I've accepted that that's what it is. So they don't care what I deserve. They care what happens. Yeah. And that's it. And then, you know, you got the whole top 10 of the division right now that is getting ready to fight in the next 3 months. They got all of us. Right. And it's stacked. And this is the time to be part of this division. I remember when this division did not exist when I started fighting in the WEC. This is what people don't know. Like me and Aldo fought for the world title in the WEC to cross over to the UFC because the weight classes just did not have enough validity to exist. Right. now it's up there with the most watched weight class, the most, competitive weight class on earth. So that tells me I have done my job. I am very proud.
There's no doubt.
Division. I'm very proud of everybody in it. I'm very proud of being aligned with any of the top 10 that are in it right now. CHITO involved in that.
Yeah. And I don't
what he says,
I don't give you credit for building the division because you're my friend. When you look at the top 30 at 135 pounds right now in the UFC, it's as good as any top 30 in any division. And I think guys like you and other champions, former champions, deserve credit for being the stars that sort of drove the boat.
Faber was a big part of that too.
Yeah, no doubt.
He was.
No doubt. So, in terms of the last 6 or 7 months for you, if you could just give me maybe the abridged version, but your last fight was a second straight win. It was a fight of the night against Pedro Munoz. That was last December. And I know you put a lot of stock in having a regular training schedule. So for those who haven't been tracking your every move on Instagram, it seems as though you've been healthy and training very consistently for the last 6 months or so.
That's exactly right. And that feels so different for me in a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why I'm able to book this fight this summer. And because I've been consistent with my sparring and my training and my wrestling, and I haven't had any like bumps or bad like things that set me back, bad injuries that set me back or anything. So my body's working well for me. I have a regimen and I kind of think I feel my body. Now, when camp starts, you're doing 5 rounds. Like I'll spar today. You just never know what's going to happen. Every day you're driving to sparring, you're sick to your stomach. That today could be the day I do or don't get knocked out in practice.
Right, so, right.
Welcome to the life of, a fighter. You wake up for people at home, you wake up in the morning, you want to be a fighter. Yeah, you might get knocked out that morning. Every day you might get put to sleep. It can get nerve-wracking, but that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Right.
It keeps you alive.
Yeah, I mean, I have anxiety for my strength and conditioning workout with my trainer tomorrow morning, but I know I'm not going to get knocked out unless I, fall forward on the sled and concuss myself. So
that's legitimately the big difference that I can explain to anybody who exercises every single day. It's not the fact that you're just exercising and you're nervous for the exercise and maybe you'll get tired. It's the fact that maybe you'll get tired and then get knocked out in practice, and then the rest of your day really sucks.
Right.
Not just that day, but your week. You're really pretty mad at yourself when that happens. Right. It's happened to me before. Last time that happened was in 2009, and I was two weeks out of a fight with Joseph Benavidez when that happened. So I remember that very vividly, and got to make sure it doesn't happen again today.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't. All right, we got a couple more minutes. Real quickly, you threw out the first pitch at a San Diego Padres game recently. It looked like a strike, but candidly, for our audience, like scale of 1 to 10, how did you assess your performance? I know you prepared a little bit for the first pitch.
I'm really proud of myself. I feel like I threw a nice changeup. You got to change the speed on those because if you try to throw a line drive down there, they know the timing of that. But I felt that if I could keep it slow, it would mess up the timing. And if they had a chance to try to hit it, they might miss it. They'd be too far ahead of the ball because of the speed that I'm throwing.
Right.
So
I got it.
I'm happy with my performance personally. Looked very American.
Yeah, no, it's great to see you out there. So what is the extent of your suffering today other than the sparring? I mean, do you have to go underwater with weights as well today or no?
That's tomorrow.
Okay.
That's
Deep
tomorrow.
End Fitness. Let's go.
I'll be doing that. And then, Deep End Fitness, my boy Prime Hall opened a program where it's like underwater survival experts, and you mix in going underwater to work on your heart. It keeps keeping yourself calm under obviously dire conditions, but also it resets the body. It's like a physical therapy session with all the water work. So I mix that in to calm down in 2 sessions a day. But today it's just sparring, and then I got pads tonight with my coach Eric Del Fierro. We're staying on the gas pedal, and I got 8 weeks to just build my body up.
I love it. All right, last thing. So every time somebody buys a One More Sleep t-shirt, it hits me in a certain kind of place, right? Because I appreciate the support to whatever degree, right? So when somebody goes on to DominickCRUZMMA.com and gets aligned with what you're doing as far as the footwork is concerned, I would imagine it's like One More Sleep times 100, right? Because foundationally and fundamentally, what you have built as far as your footwork in combat sports is a really special thing. And I think to see a fighter take the plunge has got to be pretty special for you every time that hits the inbox, I would think.
Oh, I'm so grateful when people go and they trust that there's a process, that it's not just a bunch of nonsense, because it's not. There's angles, there's movement, and more than anything, it's not just for fighting. That's why I created it. I think that, any sport, no matter what you do, if you flood it with something, if you flood footwork, and they might not all be relevant movements, but if you flood your body with these movements, then there's no movement you're not ready for. And how many times in a fight do you get hit and you're rocked and you don't have your feet underneath you? And if you know how to move your feet in all aspects of balance and all over, and there's no just one linear stance that you have to have all the time,
right?
I think that you can just really find a way to make yourself successful in any sport. If you can get the feet working, that's basketball, that's football, that's soccer, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling. I mean, it doesn't matter. Feet, having your feet underneath you is key. So that's why I started to come up with that. And that's why I focused on it so much when I started martial arts. I said, what will make things different? What's the one thing that everybody's doing the same? Well, their feet, their left foot's in front, their right foot's in back, and that never changes. Or their right foot's in front and their left foot's in back, and that never changes. And they stay in that stance the whole time. What if I could move everywhere at all angles, at all times, in any situation? Wouldn't that be an advantage? Well, I look at it as it is.
Yeah, and you've created a revolution in the process. All right, DominickCRUZMMA.com if you want to get involved. My man, I appreciate the time. August 13th, Under the Lights, Dominick CRUZ and CHITO Vera. Wish you the best in San Diego. I just might have to show up as a fan. I think I'm in Salt Lake City the next week. I think I'm going to come be a fan that night and have a couple tequila, splash pineapple, and see if my man can't get the job done.
Oh, yeah, we'll have a nice drink after that win. Thanks, Sammy.
All right, buddy. I appreciate the time. I'll see you soon.
Peace.
There he is, the greatest bantamweight of all time, Dominick CRUZ, joining us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Look forward to seeing that guy this Friday, by the way, for our judges and referees seminar. And I don't mean to be antagonistic or not enthusiastic, but Dominick is actually legitimately enthusiastic to hear some of what I have been hearing for the last 8 weeks. So part of it is just that I have solicited this information so much over the last 2 or 3 months from all different types of sources that it's not necessarily a lot of breaking news for me. But the UFC bantamweight division, that fight is CHITO Vera, number 5 in the world, against Dominick CRUZ, who is number 8 right now. That's August 13th. Rumors that 4th-ranked Corey Sandhagen is fighting number 9 Song Yadong, maybe in September. You've got Pedro Munoz and Sean O'Malley, 10 versus 13. That is July 2nd at UFC 276. And I think Petr Yan maybe reportedly turned down the August 13th date, perhaps against CHITO Vera. Your boy Dominick CRUZ signed on the dotted line, and there you go. And I will just say in closing, as far as any perceived rooting interest that I may have in that fight, Dom and I have had myriad conversations about Marlon CHITO Vera, who is probably one of my 5 or so best friends on the roster. I hold CHITO in the highest regard, and I feel like CHITO Vera and Dominick CRUZ would actually be the best of friends if they weren't competitors. But I think this fight, to whatever degree, has been on both of their respective radars, and it seems to make sense now for both parties, and that's why it's happening. I've spent so much time talking fighting with Dominick CRUZ. Nobody has helped me more as a mixed martial arts commentator than Dom, and yet my bond with CHITO is super special. So I think I will be happy at the end of the day with whatever result, but I will say, certainly nice that I'm not assigned to that fight, because that one is going to be pulling at my heartstrings in some kind of way. All right. If you want more, at Anik Florian Pod on social media. Thanks to the Dominator for joining us today. And we'll be back with a new full episode on Sunday night. Yo, later.